Welcome to This Explainer. We're about to dive into the truly incredible story behind one of Asia's biggest, most beautiful cathedrals. And what's amazing is, this is a story that wasn't born from wealth or power, but from a terrible crisis. Okay, so first, let's just try to get our heads around the sheer scale of this place. The Medak Cathedral in India is, well, it's massive. We're talking about a space that can hold 5,000 people at the same time. I mean, just think about that for a second. That's bigger than a lot of modern sports arenas. And that right there is the big question, isn't it? Why would someone build one of Asia's largest churches here, in what was basically a small, remote town? Well, to get to the answer, we've got to go back in time, all the way back to the turn of the 20th century, to a period of just immense hardship. So let's talk about those difficult circumstances, because they really set the stage for this absolutely monumental project. You see, the Deccan region, which is where you'll find Medak, was trapped in this just devastating cycle. First, a horrible famine hit in the late 1890s. Then, just a couple of decades later, another one. It was just nonstop, widespread hunger, and a real sense of desperation for the people there. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting and takes a pretty radical turn. See, the usual way of dealing with a famine back then was, temporary help. Think soup kitchens, basic handouts. But one man, he had a completely different idea. His vision wasn't just about short-term survival. It was about giving people dignity and building a real, lasting future. And that man's name was Charles Walker Posnett. He was a Methodist missionary. And when he looked at this terrible crisis, he didn't just see suffering. He saw an opportunity to build something permanent, something meaningful that would last long after the famine was over. So who was this guy, Reverend Posnett? Well, he wasn't just some random idealist. He came to India incredibly well prepared. He had a solid Methodist upbringing, of course, and formal missionary training. But get this, he also had practical medical skills he'd picked up in London. That combination, it was going to be absolutely vital for what came next. When he first got there, his job was actually to serve British soldiers, but he just didn't feel like that was his true purpose. He felt this deeper calling. So he got on his horse and rode 60 miles to this remote village called Medak, and that's where he would discover his life's work. And this was his big, powerful idea. He thought, instead of just handing out food from a soup kitchen, which is great but temporary, what if we build something? He decided to build a cathedral, a massive construction project that would provide paid work for thousands of villagers. This gave them a way to earn money to support their families with dignity, all through the worst of the famine. But he didn't do this alone. This was definitely not a one-man show. His sister, Emily Posnett, was an absolute force to be reckoned with. She was a trained medical missionary herself, and she poured her heart into social and medical work for the community. In fact, people loved her so much, they gave her a special name, Dora Sani, which means Great Lady. All right, so the vision was there, the team was on the ground. It was time to start the monumental task of actually building this thing. And I mean, this was an epic undertaking. It took a full decade to build, from 1914 all the way to 1924. 10 years. Just let that sink in. For 10 years, every single stone that was laid meant a job. It meant food on the table for a family in desperate need. So when that church was finally dedicated, it was so much more than a building. It was a monument to survival, a symbol of gratitude. But here's the thing. They didn't just build a big hall. What they created was more than just a famine relief project. It's a genuine masterpiece of architecture, art, and just unbelievable craftsmanship. Okay, so architecturally, it's a classic Gothic revival style. It's huge, 200 feet long by 100 feet wide. But here's a really cool detail. The roof, it was made with this special hollow sponge material. Why? To make it soundproof. That's a pretty amazing feat of engineering for that time, right? And then there's the tower. The central bell tower just soars into the sky, an incredible 175 feet high. It's so tall, you can see it for miles and miles around, like a beacon standing over the Deccan landscape. For all the amazing architecture, maybe the cathedral's greatest treasures are its stained glass windows. They are absolutely breathtaking. And what's interesting is they weren't all put in at the same time. They were added over decades, piece by piece. You've got windows showing the Ascension, the Nativity, the Crucifixion, each one telling a different part of Christ's story and just flooding the inside with this incredible colored light. And this is what I love about this story. It was a truly global collaboration. The gorgeous mosaic tiles for the floor, they were shipped all the way from Britain. The expert masons who knew how to lay them perfectly, they came from Italy. And all of this was brought together by the hard work of thousands of local Indian laborers who poured their hearts and their skills into making it happen. So when you step back and look at the whole story, what's the big takeaway? The Meta Cathedral, it's so much more than just a big, impressive building, right? It's this powerful reminder of what can happen when compassion isn't just a feeling, but an action. It shows how one visionary idea can create a legacy that doesn't just solve a crisis in the moment, but goes on to nourish and inspire a community for a century and counting.